So, good evening, everybody, and welcome to session 3. I hope you all had a good weekend and are fresh and ready to go for this session. Right.
Absolutely.
Great. Thanks, Shanaz. So, before we get into today's topic, let's do a small activity to refocus our minds onto the training. So, in the first session, Karen had talked about the different roles that a trainer plays, if you remember. And amongst those roles, one of them was the role of a coach. So let's complete this analogy. What we're going to do is that we're going to break you up into breakout rooms of 3 participants each. And we're going to give you about 6 minutes to discuss or complete the analogy as why a trainer is like a sports coach. A trainer is like a sports coach because. So you can think up of various reasons why you feel that a trainer, the role of a trainer is akin to that of a sports coach. So please remember to nominate a scribe to take the notes, and also the spokesperson who will come back and share their screen and debrief us on what you've come up with. Karen, can we have the breakout rooms, please? Karen? Right. While Karen is setting up the breakout room, maybe what I can
sorry,
do is...
I'm here. Sorry about that. Yeah. I was on mute. I didn't realize that.
Right. Okay. So can
okay.
we have the groups?
Yeah, let's try that one more time. So room 1 is Ahmed, Shilpa, and Stephen. Room 2 is Ezra, Fiona, Primasiri. Room 3 is Abdullah, Assad, and Kazi. Room 4 is Fiona, Nicola, and Shanaz. Room 5 is Hung and Louis and Chung. And room 6 is Akshi, Praveen, and Shoma. So remember, and we got 2 more coming in here. Remember that when you get into your groups, remember to pick a scribe, and the scribe should write in Word or PowerPoint and share their screen so that afterwards, when we come together, you can share your screen with the whole group and we can all see it. Okay, so I'm going to add you to your groups and we shall go. Any questions? We'll give you about 5 minutes. Okay, so Chung, we're going to room 2. And Motion, we're going to put you in room and Rhoda, we're going to put you in room 1.
Right. Welcome back.
Could you save it?
You had a challenge in saving your document?
I'm not sure if I saved it. I tried to save, but
Right. I hope you remember it in any case. I'm sure you'll be able to
yes.
come up with most of that. Right. So let's start with group 1.
Who was
That's
group
you,
1?
Stephen.
Oh, that's me. So our group, consisting of Shilpa and, let me not mispronounce the name, Shital, we came up that a trainer is like a coach, because we, as a trainer or coach, need to motivate the participants. We need to make them perform. So we need to make sure that they get at the best level. And we will train and educate them. We will provide them with a lot of energy. We will support the team and we will help resolve issues.
Great, Stephen. I think all very, very good and insightful points as to why a trainer is also like a coach. Team 2, room 2.
Ezra, you're on mute if you're talking.
Sorry. Group 2. A trainer is like a sales, like a sports coach, because they do need assessment. They enhance performance, enable achieving objectives. They facilitate learning, give feedback, motivate, monitoring, and as well as mentoring.
Excellent points. And I think that apart from enabling achieving objectives, they also have a role in setting objectives as well, just like sports coaches do. Do you agree?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Great. Group 3.
Room 3 is Abdullah, Asad, and Qazi, and I'm going to present on behalf of the group. And what our group said was trainers are like sports coaches because A, they enhance performance in a particular area. They are keen observers. They are essentially motivators. They provide valuable feedback. They ask questions. That's it.
Thanks. And I'm really impressed with the great presentation that you've come up with in such a short time. Thank you so much.
That's actually Qazi. So giving him the credit.
Great.
It was a teamwork. Thank you.
Thank you, Group 3. Group 4.
It's us. Let me share the screen. Can you see my screen by any chance?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So it was me, Shahat, and Fiona. So we came out with 5 bullet points. The thing is, both trainers and a coach have to improve the performance of people attending the training. And second, both of them, they need to assess where the person is and how much stretch is possible without injuring the person or the knowledge of the person. They both need to build trust in the relationship and transmit skills and attitude. And they both have to pursue pull and push strategy. And it's about like challenging and encouraging the people attending the training.
Great. Thank you so much, Group 4. Group 5.
Hi, Hong. Would you be able to share the screen?
I think there you go.
Okay. I was with Hong in Group 5. Hong, are you there?
She may be on mute.
Okay. Rohit, I'm wondering if you like our creativity. We were struggling a bit with annotating, but a trainer is like a sports coach because he needs to motivate the learners, have them learn a specific skill, give them feedback so that they can improve. Trainers also kind of push you to your limit. They practice with you. They understand your goals and objectives, and they know your limitations as well.
Great. Again, very valid and very, very insightful answers. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Louis. Thank you, Hong.
Thanks. And Group 5.
We are Group 5 already. Now Group 6.
Sorry. Group 6. Who all were in Group 6?
Group 6, that's Akshi, Moshin, Praveen, and Shoma.
Yes, I'm just
Okay.
trying to share my screen. So, the points we discussed were that trainer, like a sports coach, works on the strengths and weaknesses. They discipline the group and gives instructions. He or she is in charge of the whole group. They help to unleash the potential and co-create active learning. And trainer, like a sports coach, cannot play instead of a player, but can only guide them, give them direction, and give feedback.
Great. Thank you, Akshi. And I really like the last point, especially that, a trainer cannot or a coach cannot play. in the place of a participant or a learner, but they have to help them learn on their own and they have to help them perform on their own. Excellent points. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me go back to sharing my screen. Right, can you all see my screen now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you for all these insightful points and the wonderful ideas that you've come up with as to why a trainer is like a sports coach, and I agree with all of what you have said. But unfortunately, a lot of times, when we get down to training, we forget this aspect of our role. And then we fall into this trap of thinking that leading a training session means that your sole role is to be an expert and tell everything that you know. And then you get into lecturing. And this is a trap because lecturing vis-a-vis facilitating, a coach is doing what? A coach is facilitating. So lecturing vis-a-vis facilitating has many dangers that are not seen at first. What do you think are some of these dangers of lecturing vis-a-vis facilitating or coaching? Can you please use the chat box to give me some thoughts? What do you think are the drawbacks or the dangers of lecturing? Moshin says boring. Esra also says boring. Asad says you have to resist the temptation to teach. Stephen says my thoughts would wander off. Losing attention of delegates, learners will fall asleep. Absolutely, absolutely. So basically what it boils down to is that you are losing out on the engagement that you could do otherwise. So it also adds to your nervousness or fatigue. What happens is that if instead of getting your participants to engage, to contribute, to talk, to do activities, and it just adds to your own work and it adds to your fatigue. You're also encouraging passive learning by that. As most of you said, participants may get bored, they may get unmotivated, inattentive if your style of presenting is not their preferred style of learning. And you must remember that learning is an active process. It is not a passive process. And the other important thing is that by doing too much of lecturing, what you are doing is you are disregarding the participants' own experiences. As we all know that adult learners come with a lot of their own experience and knowledge to the class. So if you are assuming the role of a lecturer or a trainer or a teacher, then you are not really leveraging the information that your participants can provide you and make the entire learning experience much more enriching, not only for your participants, but for you as well. So the teach me phase, if you remember, we're talking about the teach me phase, is not about downloading all the content into the minds of your participants. It's about coaching participants and facilitating their learnings. That is, making it easier for them to learn and build new skills. Now, in the last session, we had started developing some of these competencies which will help you do with all these things. We will continue that in this session. And before I give you an overview of this session, I want to make sure that we are clear on what we discussed last time. So firstly, can we quickly have any volunteer who can recap within 2 minutes as to what are the main points that we discussed yesterday? Can I have a raise of hand, please? Anyone who can quickly recap what we discussed in the last session? Right. While you're deciding as to who will volunteer, let me circle back to the question that Stephen had asked. Stephen, can you just unmute yourself and ask the question again? This was, if I remember it correctly, you said, what is the difference between the Honey-Mumford learning styles and when we talk about visual, kinesthetic, auditory learners? Is that correct? Can you just clarify your question?
Yeah, so it was about learning styles, right? And we said someone likes theory, someone likes to see it practical. But I've always been taught that people also like to learn in different ways in terms of whether they're visual, they like the audio, they like text. So where does that come into play with the theorist, etc.?
Great. I think, yeah, that's a wonderful question. So now, if you've read David Cobb's learning styles, which Honey and Mumford have built upon, he has divided the learning process, the learning activity into two steps. One is perceiving information, and second is processing information. So in the first thing that we do is first we perceive information through various sensory media. And once we perceive that information, thereafter we process it in order to retain it and to then learn something new. So while what you're talking about, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, these are the modes through which different learners prefer to perceive information through. Someone prefers it through an auditory, someone prefers it through visual. And these four learning styles that we're talking about are the way a person or an individual prefers to process the information. So there are two different parts of the learning process that they are addressing. And so both are valid, but they are addressing different parts of the learning process. Karen, would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the sum of it, but to think of it another way. So how you perceive is how you take in information. Do you give, do you take in best by seeing it or by hearing it or reading it? And the other part about whether you're a reflective, whether you're whether you like to have it practical or theorist or whatever, that deals with how, as Rohit said, how you process that. But it's really how much weight do you give to the information you are receiving in terms of how much that means to you. And so, as Rohit said, one is how do you get that information into the head? And then the other one is which one do you pay more attention to once it's in your head?
So will we deal with both of these? Because especially for online learning, right? It's quite limited in terms of, well, there's a slide, there may be some moving image, and there's audio, but there's only limitations to how you can bring the variety in your classes for the let's say the perceiving part. And the processing part is obviously the kind of questions that you would ask to make them think about it. But are we going to deal with that piece as well, the initial piece of how we get it into their heads?
So yes, and you'll see this as we go along, that we talk about using visual tips for visual learners, tips for auditory, and even doing the activities will help with the kinesthetic learners. And it depends what your activity is. If your activity is just, answer a question, that's not really so kinesthetic. But something like what we did this weekend, where you had to actually create a recording and do something, those kind of practice activities, that's really about how you transfer a little bit of that kinesthetic learning, that learning by doing, into the virtual setting. And there may be other ways as we go through this that you'll see examples of it. So I would say definitely keep your eyes open as you go through this and ask yourself what techniques are they using that work for each of those different learner types. And then in terms of the processing, and how we go through those four types of people, that's exactly what we're talking about here in this module with the ease, speed, with the gloss, ease, speed, and off. Each of those applies to a different learning preference. And that's what we had talked about at the beginning of the last session. Rohit, you want to summarize which one goes with which again for the audience?
Yeah, so now in the last session, if you remember, I'll recap it just to save time. In the last session, we looked at the start of the learning cycle, and we looked at how you can intrigue and motivate participants to make them want to listen to you. And so basically we do that using gloss, that is getting attention, linked to previous experience, outline objectives, state the structure, and stimulate interest. Thereafter, we also started with the ease. And in this session, we are going to go further as far as the ease formula is concerned, which is the teach me phase. Now, we also looked at how to use activities as alternatives to lectures in the last session. If you remember, we discussed as to what are the various purposes for which you use activities. So now what we are going to do today is we're going to go further. So if just to orient you, we are still on ease, that is teach me. We started with ease in session 2, and today we are going to complete that. And towards the end of the session, we are also going to circle back to gloss to discuss your own gloss videos, where you will receive feedback from your group members. Now, to look at the outcomes that we had set for ourselves in the previous session, we've already seen the first 2 outcomes. That is, you are able now to describe the components of ease and also the activity ideas to accelerate learning. In this session, we're going to go into specifically about questioning. So when we talk about getting interactivity, talking less, and getting more participants to share their experiences, asking questions is a good way of prompting discussions. So we will, by the end of this session, you will be able to look at different types of questions that you can ask in different scenarios. We will also debrief, we will also look at how to debrief your activities. Just conducting the activities is one part of it, but to derive the true value from them, you need to effectively debrief and bring out the learning. So we'll talk about that. And you'll be able to also describe how the TPMA evaluates ease. In the last session, we had looked at the gloss evaluation of TPMA, and you would have received your feedback from Karen and myself on the same TPMA evaluation form on gloss. Today, we will just briefly look at the TPMA evaluation form for ease as well.
Rohit?
Yeah, Karen.
I just wanted to finish up with one other thought on Stephen's question about, when is what. And so just to put that a little bit in perspective, when we did that gloss, that's the part that answers the questions and addresses what the reflectors need. And now today, what we're talking about and what we started the other day in ease, that's really for the theorists and what they need. And then tomorrow we'll get into feedback and we'll talk about the help me in the help me phase, and that'll address the pragmatists. And we'll also talk tomorrow about how do you conclude in the prepare me phase, and that's going to address the needs of the activists. So Stephen, to your question, we'll definitely hit on how do you address each of those.
Right. So thanks, Kevin. Thanks for that. Coming back to what we were talking about, now when you ask questions to generate discussion, to check the learning, and to to get interactivity in your session, you need to decide 2 things when you decide what kind of questions that you ask. That is, how long an answer would you like? That depends on the time you have. Would you want a detailed answer, or do you want short answer, or you just want a confirmatory answer? And do you care about who answers these questions? So to the first point about whether you would like a long answer or a confirmatory answer, then it depends on whether you ask closed questions or open questions. So what are closed questions and open questions? I'm sure all of you know this already. Closed questions are those that can be answered using a single word or a short sentence. They usually begin with did, you, did, are, can, should, is, who. They're essentially confirmatory question. They confirm information, they check for understanding, and they secure specifics. The most common answers to closed questions is yes or no. Whereas open questions, they are intended to get more information. They require a more detailed answer. They provide you with a more detailed information from the participants. And they usually begin with what, how, or why. Now, the second decision relates to whether you have a preference about who answers the question, or you don't care about who specifically answers that question. So that categorizes your questions into overhead or direct questions. So overhead questions are questions that are addressed to the entire group as such. It's not addressed to someone in particular, and you invite participants to answer. So for example, I can say, okay, who can tell me what is an open question? Now, I have not addressed it to anybody. So anyone who wants to answer can volunteer, raise their hands and answer. And vis-a-vis, you have direct questions. Direct questions is you're asking someone by name. Shanaz, can you please tell me what is a direct question? So it is giving a specific participant to a chance to speak. Now, all these open, closed, overhead, and direct questions, they all have their various advantages and disadvantages. I'm sure you already know what they are, and you use them to suit the specific situation. But let's just do an activity to list what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages of these different types of questions. So what we are going to do is I'm going to show you a slide which I'm going to use as a whiteboard. And in the next 5 minutes, I want you to use the annotation tool to list out or to write what do you think are the benefits and drawbacks of each of these type of questions. Just to remind you, you'll find the annotation tool close to where you are seeing the share screen notification on top. If you go down to it, you'll see the annotate button. When you click in it, you'll get the toolbar.
And just remember to have your answers show. After you finish typing it, click anywhere on your screen. If you hit the return button, it doesn't show it. Thank you.
I can't find the annotation. Could you help me again?
Sure. We're at the top of your screen. You see a green bar that says you're viewing Rohit's screen. And next to that, it says view options. You click that list and go down. The third choice is annotate.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I suggest you click the text button, which is the T, second from the left. It's easier to write with that than trying to do it freehand.
Excellent. Thank you.
I can see some very nice answers coming, but I see overhead questions is being ignored. The screen is a little crowded.
I think we got a lot of answers here. Maybe we
Yes, I think we can stop now because I can clearly see that all of you know what you're talking about. So I must say, easy to read the screen. That's a nice comment. Thanks. Okay, so let me first try and read what all you've said and you've given the points, and then I'll also see if I can add on to them. So as far as closed questions is concerned, they are short, quick, easy to answer, yes. Less time required, yes. The drawbacks are they get little information and less chance to get. But okay, so it's essentially the same point. They get little information, less chance to get the information. Open questions, conversely, they really gauge understanding. You get more information. Those are the benefits. It makes people think, yes, new ideas from participants. Drawbacks, takes ages. Yes, it takes more time. It can be very lengthy. Yes, absolutely. Overhead questions, no individual pressure. Absolutely. They invite all participants. Yes. Everyone gets a chance. Yes. Rhetoric questions, is that what it says? I'm not sure what that means. Drawbacks, pressure. Sorry, no, that is from no individual pressure. Finding it a little difficult to read the drawbacks. May take time. Yes, because no one may answer if it's not directed to anyone. Wait for someone to answer. Yes. So at times, if you're not careful, you may get nervous that no one is answering your questions. So we'll talk about how to deal with that as well. Okay. Direct questions. Some of the benefits that you've given is gives people chance to speak. The drawbacks are not accepted in certain cultures. Participant might feel pressurized. It might feel offended. Yes. Okay. So just to summarize all these good points, closed questions, the advantages are that they confirm whether the participants have understood or a particular participant has understood. You can use it to close a discussion on a topic. You can probe to determine which part a participant may or may not understand specifically, and securing specifics or drilling down or converging to a specific point. The disadvantages of closed questions, as you've pointed out, little information and does not promote discussion. Open question, the advantages are they're useful for getting more in-depth information and broadening the conversation and checking whether someone has truly understood. Just by merely saying that yes or yes, they've understood doesn't really give you a understanding of what they have understood. Disadvantages of open questions, yes, as you mentioned, it takes more time and it also may lead to digression. Your participants may go off on a tangent. The advantages of overhead questions, useful. They can act as an invitation to participate, can provide a wide range of responses and opinions, stimulate the group, and they do not make any single person uncomfortable. Whereas the disadvantages are, like you pointed out, it may take longer to get responses, and sometimes the same participant, handful of participants may end up answering all the questions, while some of the quieter or more introvert participants don't get a chance to speak at all. Direct questions, the advantages, like you said, it keeps the conversation on track. It gives everyone a chance to speak by involving the quieter participants. You can get them to, answer by specifically asking them to do so. It usually takes less time to get someone to answer, and it helps the introvert participants. It can also help you control some of the people who are overbearing, negative, or people who are distracted. The disadvantages of direct questions, it involves a limited number of participants. It may inhibit communication between participants. It may make some participants uncomfortable if they don't know the answer. If you ask someone and they're not aware of the answer, they may feel a little uncomfortable. And it may also cause the participants to withdraw if the questions are always directed at the same few participants. And a lot of us tend to do that. I mean, I'm not saying you have favorites, but you know that, there are some people who are more participatory, they will be eager to answer. So you make the mistake of repeatedly asking the same people, thereby disengaging some of the others. So some of these major issues that can happen while asking overhead questions, some things to be careful of. That is, first is disengagement. In every meeting, there are approximately a handful, say about 10% of people who are always eager to answer, whether they know the answer or not. When you ask overhead questions, they are most likely to jump in and answer. And the quieter students soon realize that if they keep quiet for a few seconds, the more active students will answer the question for them, and they need not really take the trouble of thinking about the answers or trying to participate. So this may in the long term lead to them getting bored and disengaged. And the second major challenge of this asking overhead questions is frustration amongst people who like to think out loud. Those who like to figure out the answers in their heads before speaking, they get overtaken by the people who like to, again, jump into answer without really thinking about the answer, giving it a lot of thought. So too many direct questions can make participants feel uncomfortable at times. And too many overhead questions can cause disengagement or frustration. So the key is to balance between asking overhead and direct questions. So now I'm going to ask you an overhead closed question. By show of hands using the hand raise icon, how many of you have at some point asked a question to a group and nobody answered? Have you had that experience while delivering a training? You ask a question and no one answers. Please raise your hand if you've been in that position. Yes, Akshi, Ahmed, Hong, Nicola, Fiona, Asad, Louis. Yes, I think most of us have had that experience. So what do you do? What do you do in such a situation? Actually, first thing we must realize is that why has such a situation arisen? It's not because of the participants didn't really know the answer. Why hasn't this animated? Sorry. Okay. So this hasn't happened because the participants don't know the answer. It may have happened because of some common mistakes that we make while asking questions. Right? So what are some of the common mistakes? First is asking vague questions. If the question is not clear enough and the question is vague, then the participant may have a difficulty in answering it. So how do we avoid asking vague questions? First is to be clear and concise. Second common mistake is repeating a question when no one answers. So what do? We should pause if no one answers, then rephrase if there is no answer. And if there is still no answer, then you can prompt for answers by linking it. So if the question is not clear enough in itself, maybe you can link it to something that you've talked about previously. So for example, if I'm asking a question about what is it that the pragmatists have in their mind as far as which is the primary question, I can link it to do you remember that when we talked about feed, what was the question that we had discussed? So you can prompt the answer by linking. Another common mistake is answering your own question too quickly. What happens is that sometimes when we ask a question and we don't get an immediate answer, we tend to give the answer out ourselves. Now, instead of doing this, we need to give the audience time to think. So there is something called the 10-second rule. That is, after you ask a question, you wait for or count to 10 in your mind. And if there is still no answer, then you can rephrase or give the hints that we talked about. Let's look at some more tips for asking questions. There's something, the technique called pose, pause, and pick to prompt answers. That is, if you ask an overhead question to the group and no one answers, then you can ask the question directly to a specific participant. But make sure you have given a suitable pause and given everyone a chance to think before picking up a single participant. Then you can relay to get multiple points of that. That means that instead of once you asked an overhead question, instead of picking out one person, you can ask the same question to a number of different participants. Now, this is a good technique when same question may have multiple answers. It may involve opinion. Different people may have a different answer to that based on their own experience. So if you ask different people, you may get different perspectives, you may get more information, and it also builds curiosity as well as involvement of the more participants. And lastly is reflect or reverse the question for some tough questions. So if somebody asks you a question and you're not quite sure how to answer it, then you may like to leverage the collective experience and wisdom in the room by reversing the question and asking the audience to answer it. While they are doing that, it also gives you more time to think and it prompts ideas in your mind. It works well if you feel the participant is asking you a question as a challenge, and you may paraphrase it and ask that participant to provide that answer first. Though you need to be very careful in your choice of words and tone when you are reflecting or reversing the question. If you don't ask or if you don't reflect the question with an open and positive body language and tone, the audience can feel that you are being defensive or you are trying to avoid answering that question, or you don't really know the answer. If you really don't know the answer, there is no harm in actually saying that, okay, I'm not sure about this. Maybe someone in the audience knows, maybe you can help me out, or maybe I can check and get back to you. Right.
Rohit, reverse question. Could you share a little bit about the reverse question? Someone missed it.
Right.
What does that exactly?
Okay. So can someone in the audience answer that? Can someone unmute and answer that, please?
Can I try?
Yes, please.
Does it mean you ask the participant, what do you think about it?
Yes.
So that is what you have just done.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm sorry. You got it now?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. So what I did here was I answered, I mean, I showed instead of telling, right? Okay. So all these, while I've covered all these very briefly, because we have limited time, there is a very nice handout on 5 questioning techniques, which is part of the material that you have received. You can go through it in detail, and I'm sure this will give you a lot of new ideas about how to use different types of questions to generate discussions. And it's a good idea to use a healthy mix of these techniques to keep your audience interested. And also, it helps them discover key points for themselves and keep them engaged. Now, another way that we discussed how learning happens is through activities. Now, the actual learning of the activity takes place when you debrief the activity, because it's not just doing the activity which is important, it is also drawing out the right lessons from that activity. And questions is a great way to help participants get these learning out of the activity that we have done. So there are some debriefing questions, how you can ask effective debriefing questions. They focus on, they enable self-discovery. That means what happened and what is the implication. It also connects the activity to the preceding or following learning. That means if the activity has occurred after something that you have demonstrated or you have explained, then the effect debrief question focuses on reinforcing the previous learning points. And conversely, if it occurs as an introduction to a new topic, then the question and their answers should serve as an introduction and ease participants into the learning itself. And the less effective questions to ask about the activity are, did you like the activity or not? Now, that is not really giving you an, or that's not really deriving any lesson out of that activity. It means, yeah, it was fun, but then what's the point? Then the point of, if you focus only on the activity outcome, you are missing the focus, you are missing the point. The point of debrief is not the result itself. Were you able to complete the action plan? That's not completing it is not the point of the activity. Point of the activity is, were you able to actually derive the right lessons and apply it in an action plan? And don't focus on the events that occurred. That is less effective. You need to focus on what has been the learning. So how do you put all this together, and how do you ensure that you get the best out of an activity? So it's good to have a model to be able to do that. So let's take a look at one model that we can use for debriefing various activities. So this model is called the what, so what, and now what model. This can make your job of asking questions easier while you're asking the participants about the debriefing of an activity. So what happened? This question explores both the events that occurred during the activity and the emotions that participants felt while doing the activity. Because it's important to ask about what they observed, what they felt, and because it leads to deeper insights into what the activity meant to them or how it helped them. The so what question is, so what can we learn? So having said that this is what happened, that what you did in the activity, so what can you learn from that? It looks at the implication of the activity, including the implication of the emotional aspect. So if you're doing a role play and in which a customer is denied a service, or a salesperson is rude to a customer, you can ask that person who's playing the customer, so how did you feel when the salesperson was rude to you? So what do you learn from this? Right? So that is how this debriefing model goes. And now what? The now what question takes those lessons learned from so what step and apply them to a job or a real life situation. So therefore, if you felt insulted or if you felt humiliated What is it that you should do while you are in that situation as a salesperson or as a customer representative, customer service representative? So this is the way that we can debrief the activity to derive the maximum learning value out of it. When you debrief an activity, your goal is to get the participants to tell you what they observed, what lessons they learned from that observation, and how they can apply those lessons learned in the real work. So this model fits into these three aspects of the activity. So as you can see that this teach me phase is more complicated than simply sharing knowledge. And I'm sure you all are well aware of that. It's not just lecturing. That, like we said, a trainer is like a coach. You've seen what all they need to do. Also, they need to engage in active learning. They need to engage the participants by asking various types of questions. So, but trust me, a lot happens that this teach me phase is actually it's the longest part of your training delivery, right? So accordingly, even if you look at the indicators or the competencies required to effectively deliver this phase is comprehensive. So let's quickly take a look at what are some of these indicators that have been laid down by the TPMA criteria, and how the assessor is going to assess you if you go in for getting your videos assessed for your certification. What is it that is going to be checked? Okay, so in your handouts you have the TPMA Teach Me, that is ease evidence indicators. I'll request you all to open that. Now, this list contains the examples or summaries of the most important evidence indicators or considerations that you need to look out for while executing the ease part or the teach me part of your training, right? So what I will request is if you can take about 2-3 minutes to review these indicators, go through them, read each one of them. And if you feel there are some that you tend not to do during your trainings or something that you miss out on, just place a check mark against them, just highlight them. Right. Can I have a volunteer who can tell us some of the points that they checked or some of the points that they noticed that they tend to leave out or ignore during their training? Please raise your hand, anyone who wishes to share. Yes, Sheetal. Please unmute yourself. Sheetal, please unmute yourself and let us know what you think you missed out on.
Just a moment.
Thank you.
Okay, am I audible now?
Yes.
Okay, the one thing that I think I sometimes miss out on is linking it with the future activities or actions that they need to take after learning what they've learned in the class. So that's sometimes that gets skipped, I feel.
Right, right. Thanks, Sheetal. Anybody else? Anything they feel that they tend to overlook, or all these criteria which have been listed out in the form?
Can I proceed? Shilpa.
Yes, Shilpa, please. Yeah.
Sorry, Louis raised the hand.
No, go ahead. I'll go after you.
Okay.
Yeah, Shilpa, you
so,
go.
Measuring activities is something which I miss out on, or perhaps I don't know exactly how to do that.
Right.
So, how do you measure whether each participant's understanding, the level of understanding of each participant, and whether all of them are with you or not? That part, I think I'm little.
Right. So if you go back to the handout on the types of activities, since there is limited time here, I may not be able to go into that right now. But if you go into that, that will give you a clear idea about what measuring activities are and how you can conduct those to basically measure the learning that has happened. So there are monitoring activities and there are measuring activities, and there's a clear distinction between them. So it's given in the handout, and you can just read that.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Shilpa. Yeah, Louis.
Yeah, in my case, sometimes I have a difficult time managing the class time properly, especially when there are discussions where they have to share their experiences. Sometimes I feel that if I cut them, that I'm going to not allow like more of the sharing to happen and more of the learning from each other. So that's where I have a difficulty sometimes. And that ends up extending the session.
I completely identify with that, Louis, because that is exactly what is happening to me right now. I'm past the 1 hour mark, and I am interested in listening to what all you're saying. I don't want to miss out on what Ahmed has to say next. So I'll restrict the answers to one more speaker, that is Ahmed, and then I'll move on. Yes, Ahmed, please.
Thank you, Rohit. Thank you, Rohit. Actually, the thing which is ask each participant roughly the same amount of questions.
Yes, I think that is not only difficult to practically implement, but it's also practically difficult to track. But I feel as long as you make sure that everyone does have a chance to speak and no one is completely quiet, and you are generally, not allowing any individual or a few people to overly dominate, I think we can generally do that. You don't really have to keep an account book of, okay, maybe, equal number of questions, but as long as you get the sense that you're doing it equitably, I think that should be good.
Thanks.
Right. So I will, what is the biggest mistake out of all this that we discussed and so far? What do you think is the biggest mistake that facilitator can make during the ease phase or the teach me phase? Please write in the chat box. What in your opinion is the one biggest mistake that a trainer can do? Shanaz says, become excited about the activity and not process the learning. Isra says, become defensive without checking the learning going on. Yes, yes, absolutely. In my view, one of all these lead to actually, or emerge from one particular mistake, and that is forget to praise, yes. Kazi says not be engaging, yes. And I think this stems from a common mistake, and that is talking too much, getting into the lecturing mode. You forget to facilitate, you forget your role as a coach, and you tend to lecture. So here are some tips that you can use to avoid too much lecturing. First and very, very simple is speak less than 40% of the time. If you plan to do that, you can. What will happen in the rest of the 60% of the time? You will get your participants to answer your questions. You will get them to do activities. You will get them to share experience. So if you plan to do that and speak less than 40% of the time, it'll automatically increase the interaction and the facilitation part of your training. And one way of doing that is to ask yourself to wait. What is wait? It is an acronym for why am I talking? It's a reminder to talk less and ask more. Another tip is to ask questions. Questions are a good way of, like we just saw, pull learning from the participants. It also favors those who are auditory learners and reflectors. Instead of telling them the main points, turn the statements into questions that require them to tell you the main points. And I'm sure that, with the kind of experience that participants have, it can help in, adding value to what you are already telling them. And it can also at times help to quell any, kind of misunderstandings that they have or wrong kind of ideas that they may have about a particular topic. It can also dispel those. You also need to encourage participants to share experiences. People believe most in what they hear themselves say. So use their experience as a way to prove your key learning points. So for example, if you're talking about a particular kind of experience, you can ask the participant, so has it ever happened to you? Like I just asked you that, has it ever happened to you that you ask a question and no one answers, right? So if you relate it to the participants' experience and you get them to share those experiences, the overall value of learning will be much more. And lastly, defer to the group occasionally. Instead of always telling the group on what they should do or on what scenario they should work, allow them to choose their own scenario that relates to their learning or their workplace or their experience. For example, in a class on customer service, instead of telling them the scenario to role play, let them choose their own scenario. And you need to give verbal and non-verbal reinforcement to learners. This is very, very important. When participants are being interactive, when they are participating, it is a very good practice to encourage them so that it engenders more participation. You do this by verbally, by your words. You also do it by your body language, by nodding, by praising them. So the thing is that they should not feel unacknowledged. Now, before we go on to the next topic and next activity, we are way past 1 hour. So I will stop here and we can take a 5-minute stretch break. It is 7:42 by my watch, or it is 2 minutes past. So at 47, we will resume. Right. Can we resume?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, thank you. So I'm seeing some very, very interesting questions coming up in the chat box. And so let's see, we'll figure out how we tackle them once we finish with what we have to do today. Maybe we can take up a few of them here. And please feel free to continue the discussion in the WhatsApp chat also. I mean, that is one of the advantages of having that tool with us, since we can't, do offline discussions here as we do in class. Like, once maybe during the breaks, we go out and we have some chat, or even towards the end, we have more time to, address these kind of questions. Maybe some of these we can take on there. We'll try and take one or two at least here towards the end. Okay. Coming back to what we were talking about how to involve your participants. Now, while remembering to involve your participants, we must make it a point to remember to pay special attention to how we involve the women participants in our class. Now, remember that in certain cultures, in certain countries, especially in rural parts, it's very difficult for women to come and join a training session, regardless of whether it is face-to-face or online. Cultural beliefs, laws, household roles, prior education or lack of it, financial issues, logistical issues, all these can make it difficult for women to attend training. And as when we are organizing these trainings, either intentionally or unintentionally, we may forget to address these issues, which can make it more difficult for women to attend. So let's take a look at how we can encourage women's participation in training, right? So what we're going to do is, we're going to use the new tool that I had mentioned, and thanks to Wong for suggesting this tool to us, and we found it to be very useful. This is called Jamboard. It's a Google tool. We're going to use that. Now we're going to get divided into 4 groups. And I have created a Jamboard. Karen has just pasted the link for that on the chat. When you go into your breakout room, please open this link on your browsers and you will come to the Jamboard, which you can annotate. Now in that Jamboard, I have created 4 pages. There is a navigation bar right on top of the page that has got 1 of 4, 2 of 4, 3 of 4, and 4 of 4. So group 1 should use page 1 and so on. Group 2 should use page 2. On that page, I have put a specific question. The same, these questions that are given on your screen on the slide, I have given each group 1 question, which is written on top of the sheet of their group. What I want you to do is, on that sheet, you can use that sheet as a tool to brainstorm and come up with the what are the issues that prevent women and what are the solutions, right? So you need to use your specific page of your group to capture your ideas, and when we come back, we can share that. We can share the screen and you can discuss those and debrief those, right? So Karen, can we have the breakout rooms, please?
Sure. So in the first group, it's going to be Ahmed, Nicola, Praveen, Kazi, and Stephen. And you're going to answer the question, how do we unintentionally make it more difficult for women to go to training? And the go-to is in bold here, because what we're saying is it's not about, what we're really focused on is even getting them into the class becomes an issue. So that's really what we want to focus your thinking on, is how do you make it, how do we unintentionally make it more difficult to even get women to show up? Forget once they're there, just getting them to show up. In room 2, it's going to be Fiona, Louie, Shilpa, Sheetal, and Shoma. And you're going to answer the question, the second one, what can we do to attract women to training? Here again, the focus is what can we do to get them to come to training? So just to clarify the difference in the question, the first group is looking at what are the things we do that unintentionally make it difficult. And then the second group is thinking about what can we do to make it easier to get them to show up to train. Group 3 is Abdullah, Akshi, Esra, Mohsin. And you're going to take that third question, which is how do we unintentionally make it more difficult for women to participate during the training? So here, your question is really about, let's assume that you've gotten them into the classroom, but once they're there, what do trainers sometimes do that makes it difficult for the women in the classroom? And then finally, the fourth group is Assad, Chung, Hung, Premasiri, Shanaz, and Vikram. And you're going to think about the women that are already in the class, and what can we do to encourage them once they're in the classroom? What can we do to encourage them to participate more actively so they're not just sitting there quietly in the room? So those are the four groups, and we'll give you about 8 minutes to use the Jamboard, which is in the chat feature. So click on that, and then if you're ready, I'll send you to your room. Are you ready? Should I send them, Rohit?
Yes, please. I think there's some time is being wasted in trying to figure the tool out.
Yeah, I think so. The other thing I realized is we probably shouldn't have had solution and issue on all pages, because really each of the group 1 and 3 have the issue, and group 2 and 4 really have solutions. So maybe we set it up a little bit more confusing too.
Right, right.
But I think they're getting it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go pop around.
There are quite a lot of questions in the chat box, and some very good questions. It's a pity that we won't be able to do justice. I'm just trying to note them down so that, maybe in the chat or sometime I can at least address some of them.
Yeah, and also remember at the beginning of the next session, we can address some of them too.
Right, yeah, but let me just make a note of them.
Yeah, good idea.
Right. Welcome back, everybody. I hope it wasn't too much of a struggle trying to figure out the new tool. I saw some of you trying to do that. I hope that didn't take away too much time from the activity itself. Right. Can we have group 1 first, please? Can you share your screen? Wow, that's a very colorful and full board. Yes, who's the spokesperson? Can you please? Please unmute yourself, whoever is the spokesperson for group 1, and just please summarize the points that you've discussed.
We did not decide, but I can start.
Please, Kazi, please go ahead.
Yeah. Sure. I think, first of all, of course, the scheduling.
Right.
If, for example, it is scheduled at a time when, for example, it's evening classes. For some reason, it's easier for people after work, they can come and join without any regard for women's special needs or of security. That's generally the case. And then we had the question, and then there was some solution as well. See, so we said we can organize the program during daytime, or even calculating the time that by the time the person, so that the person can reach home within the daylight. So that kind of things I can see here. My other colleagues can mention other points also if they want to from team 1. I think I made a mistake because the question was difficult women to go to the training is the issue, but here we brought in other issues from other groups, I guess.
That's all right. That's all right.
But one is interesting. One is sexist language. If in the invitation it says as if it is addressed to the men only, so they already feel excluded. So this is one issue that can be there.
Right.
Venue.
So
time.
let me summarize what you're saying, Kazi. Firstly, is of course it's difficult to get to training because it's not safe because of the timing and because of maybe the location of the class. So we need to make it as accessible and at as convenient times as possible, right?
Correct.
Even to
the point of washroom, if a woman knows that there is actually no separate washroom or a kid-friendly place where there's no one at home to keep her kid, so could be there is a place where they could be there while the training is being received. Yeah, please.
Absolutely, and maybe this could be conveyed in advance so that they don't have a hesitation in, with that regard. Great. Thank you so much, Kazi. Thank you, Group 1.
Sure.
Maybe you can just continue to share your screen and just go on to the next. Yeah, that will make things easier for you. Yeah, can we have Group 2, please?
Oh no. We had written, okay. We had written more things.
Okay, then maybe you can share your screen. That
okay. There you go. We didn't get to decide who would present. Does anyone on the team want to do it? Okay.
Please go ahead.
Maybe you go ahead.
Okay. All right. So we discussed about having flexible training hours and timing. Also appreciation workshops for the family, because at times, maybe based on experience, the husbands don't really appreciate what the wives will be learning when they go to the training. So it's better that the family understands what the objective of the training is. So at least even the husbands are motivated to allow their wives to attend. And then also advertise training in women's orgs, because at times, I guess, they don't get to go to the training because they don't know that it exists. So if you reach them in the right venue, then they would be able to sign up for it. Also, for the venue to be accessible and safe. And if there are also issues with childcare, then there should be opportunity for them to allow a caretaker to come or to provide for a childcare while the mother attends the training session. And the environment needs to be conducive to learning as well for the women. And if the training comes with a fee, then the fees need to be affordable as well, based on the budget of the women who are going to attend.
Great. Thank you, Louis. Thank you, Group 2. All very, very good points. Can we have Group 3, please?
Yeah, we haven't assigned a spokesman, but I can share my screen just for the sake of time. So the issues, our question was, how do we unintentionally make it more difficult for women to participate during the training? So the issues are, some of the activities makes women difficult, like walking, running. So these are there are some cultural issues, and there can be some examples like pregnancy or other things. So the solution for that is you should have multiple activities, not only physical ones, but try different activities as well. Discrimination, disguised unconscious bias, let me put it this way. So we are not sometimes aware that we have a bias, but we assume. For example, I did it myself in a training. I assumed that women does not want to speak, so they are shy. It was in a different geography, so I assumed that that they would be shy to speak up. So be careful on your assumptions as a solution. One of the mistakes we unintentionally do is we always use he examples, but try to have more mixed examples, like use he and she together. Sometimes we are not appreciating their active participation. So active participation of women should be appreciated as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Ezra. Thank you, Group 3. Group 4.
Hello. I don't speak English well, therefore my group votes me to be the group speaker.
I think you speak English very well, Hong.
Can I just share my screen? How to share my screen?
Ezra, can you? Yeah.
I always find it difficult to find my window. How come? Have you seen the screen? Have you seen the screen?
Yeah, yeah, we can see it now.
Yeah, okay. Our group come up with, I think, very good, some very good ideas on how to motivate women to participate more actively during the training. First, we use examples that women can relate to. Or like group 3 just say, we don't just say he, but we say she in the example. We organize the training at the time convenient to women. We make it mandatory for women to be group representative, just like what they've just done to me, okay? Like in a group with all men and women, and they asked me to present, not the men to present. And then we can apply rule lady first. It's a very polite rule, right? And women have to do. We also can make women team leaders. And being a team leader, they have to be more active. Another very good idea is that women may be less vocal in our culture. So we may not need to ask them to talk, but we use other techniques that allow them to participate. For example, ask them to do or ask them to draw different things, not just talking. One more thing is that women may like something very specifically for women. For example, some toys for their children. So in the training, we can prepare the gifts that they like. And because they like the gifts, they will participate more to get the gift, I guess so. We can also invite female trainers or female guest speaker to participate the training, so they can be the role model and they can motivate people to participate more. Yeah, that's it for my team.
Great. Thank you, Huang, and thank you, Group 4. Okay, let me just share my screen. Okay, thanks. I think those were all very wonderful, insightful answers and thoughts from all the 4 groups. Now, I don't know if you all noticed something, but Group 1 consisted of men only. Group 2 consisted of women only, and Group 3 and 4 were of mixed gender. Now you can think back of yourself and see which came up with maximum number of points. I'm not drawing any conclusions here. I'll leave this to you to think back. Okay, just to conclude, summarize a few points that have come up. First is, remember to be careful what you say and how you say it. Then give examples to which women can relate. Be careful how much you can call on and look at people of both genders. Consider external factors which might make attending the training itself difficult, like was pointed out: safety, security, facilities, timings. The point of all this is not that you need to give special treatment to women. It is to remember to treat them the same way as you would treat men, including giving them all that they need to have an even playing field. Now, with this, I come to the end of this lesson on ease. So just to quickly recap and revisit what is it that we had set out to do and what were the outcomes that we were looking at. We've discussed the Teach Me phase, we've discussed ease, we've looked at alternatives to lecturing, we've looked at various types of questions that we can ask. We've looked at the debriefing model for debriefing activities, and we've looked at the TPMA evaluation criteria for ease. And you should by now be able to do all the things that are listed on the right-hand side of the slide. Can I have a quick show of hands to confirm that the objectives that we had started out with for this lesson have been met? If you feel that yes, you can do all these things listed out on the right-hand side of the slide, please raise your hand. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Right. So now, as I had mentioned, we will circle back to what we did in the last session and what we did in the interim between the last session and today, and that is your gloss video reviews. Right. So what we are going to do now is we are going to go into breakout rooms, which are going to correspond to the groups you had for your gloss video reviews. Now, we had asked you to watch the videos of the other 2 members of your group and prepare your feedback on that. And now we will give you an opportunity to share that feedback with your group members. You will have a total view, and I'm sorry, but we are a little behind schedule, so we may go into about 10 minutes of extra time today. I hope it's okay with all of you. Or does anyone have a pressing urgency to leave? Okay, I'm assuming that you are giving me the leeway to go a little late today. Thank you, Huang. Okay, so you have a total of 15 minutes in the breakout room, which will give roughly, you have to discuss 3 videos. We'll give you roughly 5 minutes for each video to give the feedback. And then we will come back and conclude this session. So can we have the breakout rooms, please, Karen?
Sorry about that. I got a little bit behind here. Why don't you take a question in the meantime while I finish setting that up?
Right. And Ahmed, you need to go. Okay, I understand. But I'll not be too much over the time. Meanwhile, I think there was a question which Louis had asked. Is avoiding lecturing applicable to all types of trainings? Well, before I give my answer, can I ask someone, some people from the group itself, what do you think? Those of you who think that yes, it is applicable to all types of trainings, please raise your hands. Is the suggestion to avoid lecturing applicable to all types of trainings? Wong says yes, she agrees with that. Yes, Vikram also says yes. Shilpa, yes. Who disagrees? Right. Sheetal, can we request you to unmute and tell us why do you disagree?
Yes, sometimes what I feel is sometimes some elements of some trainings are very information based, and when it is informative, it is very difficult to incorporate activities or just participation in that. So these types of topics do get into the lecturate format. However, I do feel that if prior to that and after that we have more participative methods, it does help. But yes, some topics like, for example, legalities for starting small businesses. So those are like half an hour, 1 hour chunks where one has to go into a lecture format is what I feel.
Right. So while I agree partially with you that, you know, when you need to pass on a large chunk of information, there is little alternative to lecturing, but we can use a little bit of creativity to make even those those aspects, or add interactivity in that. That is, once you conveyed that information, we can add ways and means to add interactivity to that by, you know, maybe by doing a case study so that they can apply that. And so we're not looking, if you're conducting a training on that and you restrict it just to the conveying the information part and leave out the activity or the application part altogether, I feel it may not be as effective as if you had included some activities.
Sure. Yes, absolutely. What basically I was just referring to the fact that the beautiful format that we are learning right now is a very, very highly interactive format. However, some topics make it very difficult for that kind of intense interaction. But yes, we can definitely package it in a way that it becomes more participatory in that sense.
Absolutely. And remember, where all this is coming from is addressing the learning needs of all the 4 different types of learners. Some people actually learn better by just by doing it rather than listening
Absolutely.
to it or understand. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Karen, are we ready?
Ready. And we are going to give them how many minutes?
We wanted to give 15. Should we?
I think we're going to have to bring that down a little bit. Why don't we try
So maybe 12.
Okay, that sounds good.
Or 10, yeah?
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good. All right, I'm sending you to your groups. Sorry about that, Rohit.
No
I got
problem.
caught up trying to find the answer to that question. I found some articles that I put in the chat about, you know, the mixed of virtual and in person. So you can refer to that. You can just tell them to read those.
We are about 10 minutes behind.
Yeah. What can we cut?
Nothing now. Maybe I can just leave out the one tip part.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead, leave that out.
Yeah. And for debrief of this,
I would maybe just summarize it down to what did you notice, because these are so good anyway. You know, was there one that people in your group tended to miss more than others or something like that?
Should I
or do that last question, or, you know, or what did you observe?
Sorry?
I said, or do that last question that's on the screen, to get attention and to stimulate.
Right.
I'd say
I
pick
think
one.
that's a good idea.
Yeah,
That's a good idea.
Not quite sure where we got so off on this one. I'm gonna
just go to some of the rooms and
I'm gonna go check out a room.
yeah.
So I think we're back, Rohit.
Right. Welcome back. I see only 18 people.
Oh, sorry, you're right. Got about 1 more second.
I think one of the groups is not back as yet.
Yeah, now.
Right. So welcome back, everybody. And I'm sure it must have been an insightful experience to get some feedback from your peers. And I did realize that some of the groups had a little bit of technical difficulty. And the good thing is that they've already worked out a solution as to how they're going to overcome that. Now, just in the interest of time, I just want 1 or 2 views on the experience of giving feedback as well as receiving feedback from your peers, especially with regard to the getting attention and the stimulating interest part of your own presentation and your group members' presentations. Some views on that. What did you notice about that? What feedback did you receive on those 2 specific aspects? Can I have some volunteers by show of hand, please?
Can you repeat the question, Rohit? Is it for feedback that we've received?
It is for both. It is for feedback that you've received and the feedback that, or the what you noticed in your group members' presentations with specific, attention to getting attention and stimulating interest. You don't have to talk about all the entire presentation, but some key learnings that you've had about getting attention and stimulating attention, either by watching the other person's video, giving feedback to them, or by receiving feedback from them. Right? Yes, Akshi, can we have you, please? Please unmute.
Yes. I had started with giving a short movie clip, and I realized that there was this technical issue where the sound was not there in the video, and so I got the feedback that it did stimulate interest, but at the same time throughout the whole video he was distracted and trying to figure out what they were talking about in the clip. So it had almost like it got the attention, but the attention didn't leave after even the clip finished.
Right, great. That was a great insight. Someone else had raised their hand but put it down thereafter. Was it Moshe?
It was me.
Yes.
Yeah. Can I?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, Esra, go ahead, please.
Okay. My first feedback is we are being more harsh on ourselves in criticisms. So that was something that I want to share. In terms of stimulating interest and getting attention, I realized that I should have given more emphasis on what's in it for me, maybe with more examples. So from my side, that was a learning experience.
Great. Thanks, Esra. Yeah, Moshin.
Yeah, I received the feedback, especially on stimulating side. I used to miss it. I have realized, 2 questions: how important is this skill for you, and why this is important for you, and how you are going to apply in your life, basically. So these are the 2 questions I'm going to use in future. Wonderful, excellent. I really liked it.
Thank you, Moshin. Yeah, any one last volunteer, please. Anybody?
Kazi here.
Yeah, Kazi, please.
I think, I lost out on the purpose of the training, especially articulating in a manner. I did talk about the topics I will cover, but surprisingly, it was my blind spot that what's in it for them was missing. So this is a very inexpensive learning for me. I mean, it could have been very expensive if in real life. So, or maybe for many years, I'm doing this And I'm now worried that from now on, I should be very careful. This is an excellent feedback, and I go enriched now. I leave enriched. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Kazi. Great. So now that you've gotten all this feedback and also seen yourself in action, I'm sure you wish that you get a chance to have a redo, right? Well, you will. And as I'm sure you're all aware that you're going to get another opportunity to record a training session, that is the long practice, and where you can incorporate some of the feedback that you've received. Now, that brings us to the stopping point for this session, and my apologies once again for being a little late. But before we go, I'll just quickly flash the homework for this particular session. We want you to read the 2 activity sheets related to this session, that is increasing women's attendance at training, what you discussed, and encouraging women during training. This is just to maybe fill in the gaps and maybe highlight some points that you would have missed. And to prepare for the next session, which is going to be tomorrow, please read the activity sheets. They're all very small. You don't have, don't go by the number. They're all 1 or 2 page each. Examples of feedback using feed, helpful phrases for giving feedback, TPMA help me feed evidence indicators, send them off, and TPMA prepare me of evidence indicators. And of course, please don't forget to complete the interim evaluation form. The link for the interim evaluation form is given on the last page of the handouts that you would have received for today's session. Right. That is all I have as far as today's session is concerned. I want to thank you all for the tremendous interactivity and the enthusiasm that all of you have shown. And for also I must remark, and I was discussing with Karen, that the quality and the standard of the videos that we have reviewed is very high indeed. And it goes a long way to speak for your experience and expertise as trainers. So I would like to, both of us would like to compliment each one of you. That is all from my side today. Thank you very much. Karen, is there anything that I've left out or anything you feel that we can add?
No, the only other thing I would say is just be prepared. We're going to call on somebody at the next session to give a 2-minute summary of what we learned today in this session. So think about the main points so that when we ask for a volunteer that we can get it. And the other thing I would suggest, take a quick run up through the chat. I put in the chat, there was a question about combining virtual and in-person delivery, for the same class, which is a really hot new topic. I managed to find 2 articles on this topic. The first, put the links to both of them there. I thought the first one in particular has a lot of good information and a lot of good links inside of it. So you might want to take a look at that too. And we can send that to you also.